Who is your favorite college basketball player of all time? Not necessarily who had the best NBA career or the best college basketball player, but who's your favorite?
Um, I'm gonna go with somebody who I think was the guy with the most eyes in college basketball, probably over the last, I want to say over a decade. To be very honest, I don't think it's crazy to say that. He was a very polarizing player, and in large part, not even due to his play, Kenny. In large part due to his family, and that is Lonzo Ball.
Mm,
Um, I loved Lonzo Ball's career at UCLA. I loved him literally from the moment he stepped on, like, because I don't care about the media and the narratives. You hear it, but him getting to that team, playing the way he did for that UCLA program, because he was a top 5 ranked player coming out of college. I mean, high school. Like everybody knew who Lonzo Ball was. Like obviously, his dad was pushing a lot of his media and propaganda, and it was like Lonzo didn't care. He
yeah.
didn't care. Like he was just there to play basketball, and it was two different sides. It was the media trying to portray him as one thing, and he just like honestly like I'm gonna go out there and play basketball, and whatever happens happens.
Mhm.
And during that college season that he was there, just absolutely sensational. Averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, and a block a game while putting up 55, 41% from, the field and three pointers. He
Mhm.
wasn't even a scorer, but he was the first. He was one of the, who he honestly reminded me of, and he got comped to him a lot, but so much of Jason Kidd,
Yep.
so much Jason Kidd in Lonzo's game. And if you're just a pure basketball fanatic, like if you just love the fundamentals of basketball, there's no way you can watch that guy play basketball
Right.
at UCLA and like not think at the very minimum he was going to be a 15, 20-year NBA player.
Mhm.
And during that time, due to all this noise around Lonzo and who he could have been and who he's going to become and who he wasn't, and was he good enough, and the three and this, and it was just so much noise. He did not care.
Mhm.
That was the part that impressed me the most. He led that UCLA team to a 31-5 record before losing to Kentucky in the South Regional semifinals. Like he generally did not care. His job was to go and just play basketball at a very high level, and he did that. After getting knocked out, obviously by Darren Fox and Malik Monk and the Bam Adebayo Kentucky team, like he got knocked out by three
Yeah.
guys who are currently in the NBA. Two have made all-star games. One who's a front runner for sixth man of the
And they're
year,
all cooking.
and they're all exactly. And and not to say his team was definitely like they had some talent on that team. TJ Leaf was very good. Ike, I'm gonna butcher his last name, but I was a real fan of him too. Anig Bagu, just a really good. Yeah, he's the center for that team. Aaron Holiday, like they had some talent,
Mhm.
but this whole team was built around like Lonzo Ball and
Mhm.
controlling not just offensively, defensively, controlling the pace of the game. And it was a short career. It was only obviously a season, but that one season was so hyper scrutinized that
Mhm.
you can feel every single game that he played
Yeah.
because there was media coverage on every single game that he played. And I just personally, it was one of, he's my favorite college player ever just due to the fact that he didn't really care about the noise. He didn't care about anything. He just went out there to play basketball, and he was able to separate the media's image from who he was on the court because he was never a selfish guy on the court. The
Right.
media was portraying him as selfish. He was one of the most unselfish players I've ever scouted,
Mhm.
both offensively and defensively. He would do whatever it took to win. And I have a shit ton of respect for Lonzo. Unfortunately, he's been hurt. Fortunately, he's actually back and practicing now.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we can see him play next year. I would like to see if he can even get some run in the summer league. But just Lonzo Ball, no brainer for me.
Yeah. So, and the thing with Lonzo, well, you got to understand about me, like my favorite types of players are pass first point guards,
Mm-hmm.
defenders, and players who are versatile, and taller players who can handle. And Lonzo was all of that. And so I didn't pay much attention to his high school stuff because it was so much hype. And then like I looked and it was the LaMelo Ball game where he was just cherry picking the whole time. I was like, all right, I don't care about this.
Yeah,
The 92 points is impressive, but I was like, all right, I don't.
it
I'll
didn't
see this
move
coming
you.
later on. Yeah, I wasn't really
Yeah,
moved by it. But seeing him in college, and even when he was healthy in the NBA, I really started to understand Lonzo Ball. And we talked a little bit before we turned the cameras on. He's not this scorer, but he just does everything that contributes to winning. And we've seen in Chicago, like that's a talented team, but what they're missing right now, everything they're missing is Lonzo Ball.
Mm-hmm.
And so huge respect to Lonzo Ball. Great to see him moving again. He posted a video dunking recently. This is all great stuff from coming off these serious leg injuries. But my favorite college basketball player, and I may show my age here. I don't care. I'm 31. I'll tell you. Corey Brewer. Now, I understand he was on a college team with NBA players who had better NBA careers, Al Horford and Joakim Noah. But I think if you were around in 2006 and 2007 for those teams, especially like I was down in Miami, I wasn't in Gainesville, but in the state of Florida, the dominance of this team, the fun, the Joakim Noah with the hair and the defense and blocking shots out of bounds and screaming, and Al Horford with the versatility and the scoring, and Corey Brewer with the defense, the athleticism. Wasn't a great shooter, but his junior year leading them to a second. Well, I'm not gonna say leading because that team was dominant. I don't really. Well, Joakim Noah was the leader, but 13.2 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, 3 assists. But you got to understand, he's playing with Al Horford. He's playing with Joakim Noah, Ryan Humphries, who didn't have much of an NBA career, but lights out shooter. Torian Green was their point guard. He was also pretty good and stable. He got drafted by the Blazers. He just didn't stick around in the league too long. But Corey Brewer, man, he was so much fun to watch. The defense was insane. In passing lanes, getting out on breaks, dunking. It was just, man, shout out to Corey Brewer. And we had this conversation because today is Selection Sunday. March Madness is about to begin. So how are you feeling going into it? Because you're the college basketball guy.
Oh, man, this is where this is honestly the most stock-changing, life-changing next week and a half that we have. The reason is everybody wants to see how you do during the tournament. Mm-hmm. It is the national talk. It literally brings players from undrafted territory into late first round conversations. It brings players from late first round conversations to lottery conversations. It's when the games matter most, what can you do to impact winning for your team? Mm-hmm. Not just scoring. Keyword is winning. And we've seen players over recent years literally get drafted just off of the basis of how they perform during these games. Taking their games up to whole different levels. We've seen Shane Larkin, who's a great example, took the Miami team for the first time to the Sweet 16, just ended up getting drafted in the first round. We saw what Kemba did. We saw what Shabazz Napier did back in the day. Like, this is what puts you on the map, and this is what can make you millions of dollars. So this is, it's honestly my favorite time of the college basketball season because everything you've done during this season, I don't want to say that it matters, but it's a foundation for you to get to this point. And now you're on this stage to perform in front of all these scouts against similarly talented teams and NBA prospects. Like, what can you do? How can you stand out to make yourself like literally a career? Like, this is your livelihood, maybe to some of these people. So it's super dope, man. I'm super excited. It's Selection Sunday. I don't have a prediction. I haven't done my bracket yet, but soon I will. And we'll just see how it goes. Super excited though.
Yeah, I don't do brackets, man. There's a lot of stress. A lot of stress. Like there's
that's
people
a lottery
who get money
ticket,
on brackets. Man. Like, man.
No. We do the free brackets around here. It's not. I think it's generally impossible for somebody to have a perfect bracket. So we'll see. Hey, hopefully somebody gets it. I think they won like $1 million or something.
Oh, shit.
Hopefully it's me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Playoff Foul. Before we even get started, make sure you keep subscribing wherever you get podcasts, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Spotify, Apple, wherever. Just make sure you keep subscribing. Lou, how you doing today?
Oh, man, pretty good, man. We had an exciting day of NBA basketball today. Mm-hmm. We had a point guard hitting a 20-foot sky hook with his offhand for a game winner, and we had a center hitting a 30-foot jumper for a game winner. So the universe is in a struggle today. The worlds are colliding, and I'm here for it. I'm here for this age of basketball.
Everything's backwards, man, but we love it. But in the opening segment, we talked about how the tournament can make or break a player and how a player can come on during a tournament and make a name for themselves. Over the past few years, there's not a bigger and better example of that, I don't think, than Steph Curry. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we know greatest shooter of all time, Hall of Famer, multiple-time NBA champion, an MVP, a Finals MVP in 2022. We know his NBA. We know his NBA career, but we talked about our favorite college players. Me personally, I always refer to Steph Curry as the best college player I've ever seen. Here's why. He came on in the tournament, gave Gonzaga 40. People were like, who is this guy? But when you look back at that season, he averaged 25.9 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 2.9 assists on 43.9% from three on 10.3 attempts. This is 2008. Like he revolutionized the game really before he got to the NBA. And I remember it because I'm in high school at the time, and I knew I didn't have much of a future in basketball. I was still playing, but I knew I wasn't going nowhere. But even still, like a guy at a small college like Davidson doing this and getting the national attention, it was still inspirational. And you could see it because I went to an AAU practice, and there were guys catching on a three-point, like in the corner, pump fake, let the defender fly by, and then shoot it. Running down court. He wasn't really running down court before they went in yet, but you could kind of see that confidence turning in college, scoring on all three levels. Like I said, 10 attempts from three per game in 2008 in college. Like that's crazy enough. Then he comes back the next year. They have a tougher schedule. Now he's playing against the Blake Griffin Oklahoma team. He's playing against, I remember a game against Duke. That season, 28.6 points per game against better competition, 4.4 rebounds, 5.6 assists on 38.7% from three on 9.9 three-point attempts. Again, right there at the 10. And I looked to remind myself today, his lowest three-point shot attempts of his college career was 8.8.
Ridiculous.
Like, this is the best college player I've ever seen. And then we know what happened at the draft. He kind of slipped because NBA teams weren't thinking in the future and understanding, hey, his position doesn't matter when you're this good. And we saw what he did. But do you remember anything from Steph's college career?
I've gone back and I've actually seen that tournament run. He was fucking sensational. Like talk about like making money in tournaments and this and that. Like Steph Curry everybody knew he was good, but they didn't he played at Davidson. It wasn't like a huge college. Like, what can he do when he gets there? And then, to your point, round of 64, they go up against Gonzaga. He gives them 40. Gonzaga is notoriously one of the greatest college basketball programs we've seen over the recent years, 20, 30 years. They're Gonzaga for a reason. And here we have, he was I don't want to say short, but he wasn't necessarily tall. He was like 6'3", like 180.
I think 6'2" at the time.
Yeah, maybe they're
going to league.
Yeah, maybe they're being generous with the 180 as well. Like he was a really skinny guy, like wasn't really toned, defined. Like he didn't look like an NBA level athlete.
Right.
And he's running around and basically unguardable during that whole tournament run. He was shooting, to your point, he was shooting damn near 10 times a game. Teams during that stage were shooting 10 times a game. Threes, teams.
Yeah.
He was one guy shooting that many times, out shooting teams by himself sometimes during some of these tournament games. And then it's like, okay, a nice little Cinderella story. Here they go. They won. Next game gives Georgetown 30 and another win. Next game gives Wisconsin 33 and another win. And it's like at this point, people are like, "Oh, this guy is special." And then obviously they lose in the Elite Eight to Kansas, but still gave them 25. Wasn't the most efficient 25, but it's like still, he started like you said, the forward thinking wasn't there yet,
right?
And there's no question if somebody does that nowadays, they would probably garner a little bit more attention because it wasn't like he was bad at everything else. He was just a tweener. Like he wasn't really a point guard until his final year there. He was more of like a shooting guard, like just lighted up scorer. He kind of learned his way into being a point guard, and just Steph's whole like little Davidson run. I love these like players that come from these smaller colleges, and when they go into the tournament, they just set the world on fire. It's one of my favorite reasons for watching the tournament is you get to see some of these guys who you typically wouldn't see against this level of competition. And it's like, what can they do? And he didn't just step up. Like he stepped up and beat these guys with a team that didn't have realistically any business being there at, competing at least to that level of maybe one game, but taking them all the way to the Elite Eight was unheard of for a team like Davidson. So Steph Curry was sensational.
And like I said, he had been putting up those numbers that whole season leading up to the tournament, but nobody cared because it's Davidson. Like their schedule wasn't that strong. Like there were doubts to be had, and people just didn't know, obviously, as well. So he goes into the tournament and does that. And it's like, and the teams you listed, the Gonzagas, the Georgetowns, these are elite schools.
Yeah.
And then, like you mentioned, coming back the second year, not only with a tougher schedule, but having more playmaking responsibility. And all due respect to his teammates, but none of them had basketball careers after Davidson.
Yeah. You didn't go to Davidson because you wanted to go into the NBA. Like, no shade to, their games or anything. It's just like we're just laying it how it is.
And so to be able to pull that off, I back then I didn't understand him falling to 7 in the draft. I still don't understand it. It's just that's like I've said it this episode. I've said it previous episode. Steph Curry is the best college basketball player I've ever watched in my life,
and I fully believe and respect that because he was that level of good. I think the closest thing to Steph having a mid-major school like that have that much of a run. And I don't because they didn't even have a run was probably Ja for Murray State when he played against literally 2 straight games. He dropped like 40 back to back in a tournament, and against if you've seen the roster that they had, it was like, come on, they have no business doing this, and they were literally just keeping their team afloat. And I know Ja lost the Florida State game by like 20 points. He had 40 of the team's 52 points or something. Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah. But just think like those examples themselves, what the tournament and tournament time can do for a player's career.
Yeah.
Like if Steph doesn't have that run, he probably doesn't go to the NBA. He's probably just another guy who scored a bunch of points in a mid-major school. It is what it is. Ja Morant made a name for himself because a dunk went viral.
Yeah.
Like think about that for a second. Like this is what this time of year does for players.
Yeah.
You have 2 of the best players in the NBA. They made a name for themselves in March.
And literally in March. And like you said, like Curry went all the way up to 7 in the draft. Yeah. Morant went 2, and in large reason due to what they were doing. In some of the higher profile games, who knows, like you said, like Curry would have eventually talent prevails, I believe. So he would have eventually made a name for himself, but it would have probably taken a little bit longer. Like he wouldn't have had the same leeway. A 7th pick gets a lot more leeway to fuck up and times and chances than somebody drafted in the late 20s. So and players progress at different times and different speeds. So maybe like if his progression wasn't like, we would have maybe never gotten this version of Steph Curry, which is crazy to even think.
Exactly.
But here we have a 19-year-old in Davidson going up against Gonzaga, giving him 40, and then continuing to win 3 more games during that same tournament And thanks to that, in large part to that, and then the next year following it up with another banger of a performance to be in conversations for, where he was top 10 lottery pick at the time, getting drafted. And, literally 15 years later, we have the greatest shooter that ever graced an NBA floor.
And probably ever will, to be completely honest.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for sure.
Luka Doncic. What I remember about Luka before the NBA was hearing his name, obviously, and his versatility, and him averaging 13 points a game in Europe. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot if you're not familiar with the European game and how team-oriented it is and how difficult it is to score over there. But that's a lot of points for EuroLeague.
Yeah. No, Luka it was the first time I started scouting a player before they went to the league. And it wasn't even, in large part, it wasn't because I was like, I'm going to start looking at this guy before he makes it. To be very honest, a lot of it was, I'm going to look at this player because Goran Dragic plays for his national team, and I'm watching Goran Dragic play. And enter this 16-year-old, 6'8" kid who has like real playmaking chops, who has a big body, not necessarily the best athlete in the way I guess people in general think of athleticism, springy and super quick, but an athlete in other ways, deceleration, body control, like things that aren't typically what you scratch off as athletic, but players have made whole careers off of decelerating and body control. Like James Harden was one of the best scorers we've ever seen. Like that was his niche for freaking his whole, basically he still does it to this day. So, and watching these kinds of players. So I'm there watching him. And then I'm like, you know what? Let me see who this kid is. It turns out he was signed to Real Madrid in 2012. He signed a 5-year deal at 13 years old. Man. Played his first game at 15 years old in what is called the Spanish League, Liga ACB, and the Euro League. That is the second best basketball league in the world.
Real Madrid is legendary.
Yeah. Real Madrid is probably the best team outside of the 30 NBA teams. They're probably better than some NBA teams, if we're being real honest. Like, it is what it is. And here we have this like 15-year-old kid in 2014 showing up and playing there. Didn't really play much, but then the next year starts coming off the bench and starts getting some more leeway. And then 2016, 2017 happens, Kenny. And for those of you who don't know what 2016, 2017 was, it was essentially Luka's first chance at starting. And he started cooking. Like, there was no other way to put it. He would just play. He barely played 20 minutes a game, and he was already putting up 16 points per game.
In Europe. That's like Europe. 30 in the US.
Yeah, this is in Europe against 28-year-old players who some of them are a lot of them are even better than players in the NBA, to be very honest. They just and a lot of former NBA players also. A lot of former NBA players who sometimes choose to live there because the lifestyle is different and yada yada. And you never really know, but some of these players are definitely talented. Like it, and he's going over there and he's just picking apart these defenses, doing everything needed. And then comes the tournament. And for those of you who don't know the tournament that I'm talking about, it is a tournament that Slovenia won, where Goran Dragic won tournament MVP, and Luka was named to the all-tournament team. He was the second best player for Slovenia. And it, maybe it sounded homer, but I knew he was special. And it just felt crazy watching Goran Dragic, who at the time had, was on the Miami Heat, obviously, but literally came out and publicly said, this is the best basketball player I have ever shared the basketball court with. The guy was 17 years old, Kenny.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, at this age, Goran said, ever. He was playing with Dwayne Wade. He had played with Chris Bosh. He had played in Phoenix with Steve Nash, Isaiah Thomas when IT was IT, Eric Bledsoe when Eric Bledsoe was Eric Bledsoe. Like, Goran had elite level teammates, and he's coming out saying, no, this kid is special. Like, he's a superstar. He's going to be the best player in the league. And the reporters are laughing at him at this point. I swear to God, you can go back, you can watch, not laughing, but like,
I remember that sort
like,
of.
oh, he's not really that serious. So then the next season, he goes into he ends up winning EuroLeague MVP. Absolutely tears the fucking life away from everybody at 17 years old and not even in prime condition, like not even prime shape. Wins EuroLeague MVP, gets named to the all-decade team from 2010 to 2020. Keep in mind, he really started playing in 2016. Just off of 3 years. They were like, nah, this, keep in mind, when that decade started, he was 12 years old.
Man.
He wasn't even 12 years. He was 11 years old when that decade started. In 2010, I mean, he was born in 99. So he was 10 years and some change. Think about that. He was 10 years old. He was named to an all-decade team where people are 30, 35. He was that level of good. And it was one of the few times where I actually saw a basketball player play. And it was like, I don't give a fuck about the athleticism.
Right.
Like, there's generally no way in hell this guy flunks. He fails out of the league. And it was one of the hardest stand my ground moments I ever had on a prospect, because there was a lot of time there where DeAndre Ayton was getting a lot of noise, which anyways.
He's been moving lately.
He's been sensational, but I just didn't. And this is no shade to DeAndre Ayton. It's more, honestly, it's 100% shade to the Phoenix Suns organization for going about it the way they did, because that's another, and also the Kings organization. Yeah. I think they just say you didn't want to draft the guy because you didn't grade him that high. But don't say like, we don't know if he can play next to another elite ball handler. Like, bullshit. When he went to Madrid, he wasn't the best ball handler. They had Sergio Llull. For those of you who don't know who Sergio Llull is, he was the best player in Europe when Luka got there.
Yeah.
Like, he had played next to an elite ball handler. So I was like, you guys are just trying to throw shit, hoping that it sticks, but it's not really working. And at the time, obviously, they had Devin Booker. They didn't want to stunt his growth and yada, yada. So it was just a lot of that. But watching Luka play overseas, it was tough, first of all, because all the games were overseas. But watching the games on like reruns and just Kenny, I was never more sure that a player was going to make it work in the NBA. Granted, I did not think he was going to be this level of elite that he is to this day right now. But the rookie year didn't surprise me. What he's done hasn't surprised me. Now it's crazy that it's normal what he's been doing. Damn near a 35-point triple-double in the league. But overseas, you know, the things he was doing in like the tournament runs and what they were able to accomplish. Every time he plays for Slovenia, it's like he shows out. Like it means something for those players to play at their actual, for their actual country. And during that tournament run, to backtrack just a little bit, it wasn't, I want to like make a point, like he wasn't playing against scrub countries or scrub players. He was playing against Giannis. He beat Giannis. Yeah. They were playing against Kristaps. He beat Kristaps. And Kristaps, after he beat Kristaps, was like, that 17-year-old kid is better than that kid is special. Like, everybody was like, no, this kid is different. Like, he's processing the game like he's a 35-year-old veteran. And he hadn't even played at that point like 100 FIBA games, like, or 100 combined EuroLeague games. Like, it was like he was still practically very new. You can tell like he wasn't in the best physique, but the whole thing was, can he do it in the next level? Can he do it against elite defenders? But my whole thing was, everywhere he's played, they've thrown him the best defender, and he was still doing that same thing. So for me, it was a no-brainer. The Luka overseas, just my favorite pre-NBA run like that I get to watch from a player.
Yeah, so for me, I honestly wasn't really that familiar with Luka until the year leading up to him getting drafted. But my baseline was, I remember when I was in high school, that was when that legendary, iconic Brandon Jennings mixtape dropped.
Oh, God.
So I'm in high school. I'm 2 years younger than Brandon Jennings. I'm the biggest Brandon Jennings fan in the world off that mixtape alone. But I say that because he went over to Europe and he averaged 7 points. And I'm like, how does this happen? And he's still this top prospect in the draft. But that was when I learned they just don't play in a way in Europe where you're going to average 25 and 30.
No, doesn't exist.
And then Brandon Jennings goes over to the NBA. A few games in, he gets 55. I'm like, okay, it makes sense. So that's always been my baseline. So when I seen Luka at that young of an age, averaging 13 because Brandon Jennings before all the injuries was a freak athlete.
Yeah.
So Luka didn't have any of that. He just had pure skill. And even still, the versatility, like I mentioned, versatility is my favorite thing in NBA players. So I was like, even if the scoring doesn't translate in the league, because I was still not sure how he worked being that slow and that whatever. I was like, even if that doesn't translate in the league, he still has his playmaking and rebound to fall back on. He'll help some teams win. You want to talk about the scoring working in the NBA? Like he said, it was a lot easier to score in the NBA, and a lot of people were taken aback by that. But I had known that from watching Brandon Jennings' experience, and
people get shocked when NBA players from overseas say it's easier to score here. There's more space.
Yeah, it's way more space, and it's Europe is so structured. Mm-hmm. Like it's like college basketball times 1,000 as far as the structure goes. That's why you're not going to average your 25s and the 30s over there. And FIBA is a little different because he put up crazy numbers in FIBA.
Ridiculous numbers in FIBA, especially recently. But
EuroLeague, you're just not going to do that. But man, like you said, 35-point triple-double this season pretty much, averaging.
Crazy. And to think that, to me, the reason I vouched for him so hard was because people were trying to downgrade what he was doing, just because I don't know what the whole stigma is with.
No, I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's xenophobia. Like even and I saw conversations about this a few weeks ago about how European players are soft and this and that. It's like, no, they're not. Like the guy's name is slipping my mind right now. But he played for the Warriors in the 90s on the Run TMC teams. He actually invented the Euro step. That's why it's a Euro step. It wasn't Manu Ginobili, it was him. I wish I could remember his name. But he was tough. He was super tough. You look at Goran Dragic, just losing teeth, getting back up, still playing, all the injuries he went through. There's a stigma around European players that I don't necessarily like. And even Dirk wasn't necessarily soft, quote unquote. He just was a great shooter, so he shot.
Was so skilled that he didn't need to bang down low.
Yeah,
but
he didn't need to But yeah, go ahead.
It was just that's the reason I vouch for him so hard, because I was like watching this guy play, and then I'm doing this. I'm scouting this draft class, and in turn I'm watching the Marvin Bagleys and the DeAndre Aytons play, and I'm like, there's no way you seriously believe that getting Devin Booker, somebody who can make his life easier, isn't going to work for him.
Right.
And at that time, the Kings had just drafted also De'Aaron Fox. He had a very good year. But, at that time, it was like, oh, so you mean to tell me you can't get De'Aaron Fox, somebody else who can make his life easier? And who's to know at that time, like, what if De'Aaron Fox doesn't work out? Because it was his first year. Booker had 2 more years and he was playing really good. And then ironically, they go out and they get Chris Paul to play alongside Devin Booker. And then for 3 straight years, the Kings draft another guard to pair with De'Aaron Fox. They went with, starting off with, he's skipping my name now, Tyrese. Then they went Davion Mitchell. Then this year they drafted Kobe Jones. Like, it's like, if you would have just got it right the first time, just to think of all the could have beens, like one of the best rivalries in basketball is Booker versus Doncic. They could have been on the same team.
Yep.
They could have been on. It's just crazy. And it was just a big what if for me. I just didn't like the fact that, if you just say like you like DeAndre Ayton because he's a center, but don't say, oh yeah, I don't see Luka playing alongside another scorer. Like we don't know what he can do alongside another scorer. Because since he's been in the NBA, when its best worked was when Jalen Brunson was at his peak, being another primary, another ball handler. And now Kyrie. And now with Kyrie. So it just felt like a bullshit excuse. And I'm not up for bullshit. So I was like, yeah, these 2 franchises I'm not going to enjoy.
Yeah, it's the xenophobia of it and just pure laziness, because
yes,
anybody who played in Europe, like we mentioned that style of play, they can play next to a ball handler. Luka doesn't have to shoot 40 times a game.
He wasn't in Europe, like, and they were winning everything, honestly.
And so it's just like I don't understand that, but look at him now.
Crazy.
It's that simple. Just look at him now.
I know Dallas is happy as fuck that they traded from 5 to 3 and drafted a damn near generational offensive player.
Yeah, and Trey's a very good player. I'm not going to knock Trey. I'm not going to say who won or lost the draft, but man,
Atlanta would rather have Luka too. And we'll end it with that, I guess.
He gave him 70 this season. LeBron James. Now, I know you're 26 years old, and it's kind of hard for me to gauge with younger people where they were in their lives at certain points, but I remember where I was. I was at W.J. Bryant Elementary in North Miami. Shout out to them. And I was in this after-school program at the time, right? Huge basketball fan already. This is actually my first year watching basketball, and I'm obsessed already right away. But I'm on my way to middle school. And like I said, huge basketball fan. I go to this after-school program. I get off the computers. I go over to either grab something from a table or something. I look up, and there's this pinned magazine cover, Sports Illustrated cover, high school basketball player named LeBron James. And I'm like, you could get on the Sports Illustrated cover in high school? Who is this? So I look around. They had the magazine sitting on the table. I'm 10, 11 years old. I don't care about reading nothing. At the time, Slam magazine was huge. Me and my brother would go to Walgreens, get the Slam magazine, cut the pictures out, put them on our wall. But I needed to read this article. I read the article, and back then, all you needed was an article. I'm like, this LeBron James person is my favorite person in the world. He's hooping like this in high school in Ohio. I need to see this. They end up having a game against, I want to say, Oak Hill. And he went down court, and he did that legendary side tomahawk dunk, whatever it was. I'm like, that's it. It's over. This is the greatest basketball player alive. I don't care who else is playing right now. I'm 10 years old. This is amazing. Then I mentioned the Slam magazine. They came up with, at the time, they had slam ups. So they knew you was cutting the shit out of the magazines and putting it on your wall. They didn't care you was buying already, whatever it was. But they did have these posters called slam ups, where you fold them out, you can just put them on the wall. That dunk was a slam up. Had that on the wall. And that whole year was just, to this day, I've never seen hype around an NBA prospect like this. Wemby was a big deal, yes, but the stuff for the younger audience out there, because we have some 18 to 24 out there, what you saw with Wemby, I don't know why they tried to make it a debate. The hype Wemby got going into the league was like a fraction of what LeBron was getting. There's that clip that pops up leading into his game, I think against Modern Day or something, and they show like Kobe and Magic and Bird and Ken LeBron join this class of players, and he's 16, 17 at the time. But he was just like, at the time, 6'7", like 225. But still, he had like a Penny Hardaway to him, to where he had the length and the size and the ball handling, and the passing was crazy. Through the legs, passes, all kinds of behind the backs, no looks at that size. The athleticism we don't even have to talk about.
Yeah.
Head at the rim by mistake, like crazy. He had the jumper in high school. You heard the stories about these top high school prospects. I had read about another high school player earlier that year. Not read about, but like saw the articles. Can't remember his name either. He has a whole documentary. He was like the number one guy.
Yeah.
And LeBron made his name against this guy at ABCD camp. And like, it's just LeBron James, the prospect. Even still, I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. We mentioned Lonzo Ball also. He had a lot of hype. Fraction of what LeBron had.
Yeah, exactly. Fraction. For sure. LeBron was deemed the one before he got into the league. Like, and it wasn't like they were just handing out specifically at those times, like they weren't just handing out like the ones because they, it was just for a lot of, like, it wasn't really like that big of a deal to be named the, like, nobody came along that they were like, yeah, that guy is different. But like you said, as soon as LeBron made it at 14 years old, playing varsity basketball and just absolutely annihilating at like 6'7", 225, got all the way up to like 6'8", 6'9", 240. Moving at that level with that level of athleticism, IQ, wherewithal, all around game, like just all of that had never been seen. And I didn't get to particularly live as much of the LeBron in high school. All I've got to see was the like getting it told backwards again. And the hype was insane. Like he would fill up basketball gyms with scouts and NBA personnel and a small student section. Because it was just he was everything for basketball at that time. Everything for non-NBA basketball, like college was thrown to the side. Melo was in college. Like, think about Melo was in college. And everybody's like, yeah, Melo's the dopest guy in college. But this LeBron dude looks like an alien at the time. It wasn't feasible for somebody to be that big and athletic and be like a one because he was really a point guard. But like, it was just so much going on with LeBron, as well as like, not obviously when we rewatch all the runs and stuff, like he was playing, they was rumored that they were playing ones or they were playing fives at private gyms with like Michael Jordan and Ron Artest. And these are like the best players in the NBA at this time. And, LeBron and MJ was on the same team. They didn't lose a single game. And LeBron was 17, 18, still in high school. This is crazy. And Michael Jordan was old, or not old, but, towards the tail end of his, like all this for a guy who wasn't even in high school. And NBA players are like, yeah, this guy is this level of, tough. Like he's just that good. He took the world by storm. For sure, he took the world by storm.
Yeah, and there were interviews. They asked Shaq about him. They asked Michael Jordan about him. They asked Kobe about him. And it was all high praise. It was all, he can come into the league. And there's that one Cavs video. It's out of context. It is out of context. But aside from that, it was all praise from the best NBA players. Like, he can come up here and really do some stuff. And did he? Like, he came into the league. I think they had him at point guard at first, but he just took the league by storm, and it didn't surprise anybody. I remember this might have been the first time they did this. Like, he got to the league, and preseason, they was like, a league pass is free. We have to promote this person. Like, crazy. And I remember just being sick because I had DirecTV at the time, and it wasn't really working it was a Cavs Pistons game. But man, like that hype and being able to exceed it. Because even still, there was the idea of like LeBron can be one of the best players in the NBA. There wasn't a whole lot of he can be arguably the best player ever. and to be 16 on a cover of Sports Illustrated, which at the time is like the sports Bible. To be in Slam magazine, which is the basketball Bible at the time.
Yeah, this is before like Twitter or like social media was like this was social media at the time. Yeah. Like what the magazines that you're like naming, like this was literally like everywhere you went, like that's what you wanted to pick up. A Slams magazine, a Sports Illustrated cover. And he ran the shelves.
And he's a full-on A-list celebrity at 16 years old in Akron, Ohio.
Yeah,
like we're never going to see anything like that again. Like we have players who are versatile now with as far as on-court stuff. Like we mentioned Luka, like obviously we have players who are versatile. That's actually from the LeBron tree.
Yeah,
whether it's Luka, whether it's Westbrook, just ushering in that idea that a star player can do everything. Because you had triple-double threats before. You had obviously the Oscar Robertson. Fat Lever was out in Denver. He doesn't get the credit because those teams just ran into the Lakers all the time. Yeah. But you had guys who could do everything, but not do everything at an elite level at 16 years old in high school, and then go into the league and do it at an elite level for 20 years. Like we're never going to see another LeBron James again. And there was kind of that feeling even back then in 2002, 2003, when he was in high school, I was in middle school, and we're just watching this whole thing play out.
Yeah. Truly, like, one of the craziest things, like, hindsight is obviously insane. Just because back, obviously now players don't come out of high school directly. Like, that's not allowed. I think they're trying to fix that too.
Yeah.
So, but like, even like the college players nowadays, like, Wemby was probably the first time that it was like, even brought up to like the LeBron level of just pre like hype. And to be very honest, most of the Wemby hype is because he's like the tallest player in the league, damn near at 7'4", and he's doing shit that he shouldn't be doing. He deservedly deservedly so got that hype. But even that hype is comparable with all the media now to what LeBron was receiving back then, with like, I don't even want to say a 10th of the media. I want to say like a 50th of the media, with like 2% of what the media is now. And that just says a lot about, like, his level of like dominance. Like you said, like every NBA star was like, yeah, this guy's next, this guy's next, this guy's next, before he even stepped on the basketball court. And then obviously from, his very first game in Cleveland till, well, I mean, TBD, honestly, to be determined, he's excelled even those expectations realistically, because nobody would have predicted that he would have been this fucking good.
And just with the era of high school players also, we also have to remember, this is after Kobe already. This is after T-Mac. This is a lot of players that come out of high school and not become who people thought they would be. At the time, you had Tyson Chandler hadn't become Tyson Chandler yet. He would a couple years later. Eddie Curry was considered a bust. Kwame Brown, obviously. Corleone Young. There was Joe Forte. There were players who came out of high school and just kind of fell flat on their faces. And so people were kind of off that a little bit. But then LeBron comes in. It's just like, we can't even deny this. Like, this is going to be something. He is not those guys. All due respect to Eddie Curry, he's not them. This is going to be something completely different. And we've seen it. We've absolutely seen it.
Yeah, to this day, we keep seeing it. And it's crazy. So he's definitely, like you, and to your point, like you said, like for a little minute there, we hadn't seen this level of like, there were still players that were coming out of high school that were getting hyped or were really good. Like Stoudemire was,
Miles.
Darius Miles.
Stoudemire
was there. Obviously, we saw what Kwame did. Rashard Lewis, like Al Harrington came out of high school as well. Like KG, but still, like when LeBron came out, like listen to the names. I said like I might have mentioned like 4 or 5 Hall of Famers right there. Like realistically,
Tracy McGrady, Kobe, just overall T-Mac, Kobe, Amari Stoudemire. Like I said, Tyson ended up having a really good.
Rashard Lewis was Rashard Lewis. KG was KG, and LeBron was still coming out of high school, and it's like, damn, like, he's
the best player to ever come out of high school.
Yeah, arguably, arguably the best player that ever came out of high school. Just crazy. LeBron is one of a kind. He's an alien in his own right.
And talking about it makes me miss that era, man. The NBA there's gonna be a lot of players if the NBA does do something. There's gonna be a lot of players who fall flat on their faces again, because I think they're really not ready coming out of high school now. But I just miss that era, man. Now that we mention it, with the being able to turn a video game on, create a player, and just choose high school as a school. Like, I miss those days, man. I ain't gonna lie. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Playoff File. Make sure you follow us on whatever social media. Subscribe to whether it's the YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. We've been getting a good amount of traction lately. Just let that continue, man. A lot of high praise for us when people do have something to say, so we appreciate that also. Lou, where can the people find you?
It's going to be at Saucy Takes on Twitter. Saucy Takes, no spaces, with a Z at the end of Takes.
You can find me if you want to, Kenny Spence NBA. Follow Playoff File. Subscribe to Playoff File. That's what I really care about. If you like the music throughout, that's my brother Devin Spence. His Instagram is BlackGlowMusic. I'm not gonna start his TikTok because that's gonna be gone in a couple months. But once again, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time.